Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 158 of Build Your Stash and Craft. So I was asked to do some envelopes and I thought, well, we've done envelopes before in the past quite a while ago. And I'm not even sure if it was in this series or the Journaling on a Budget series, but I thought, well, what could we do to go along with that? So I thought if we're going to make the envelopes, why not make envelope glue? So I did some searching because I know I've seen it before, and I found the recipes for envelope glue, and then I did some playing around myself, and we're going to get to that at the end. But first, we'll do a really quick envelope. So in order to do an envelope, we have our new metal ruler. What I do is I just cut a square that's about 1.5 times the length of my card, the longest length of my card. And I cut a square, so this is 5.5 inches. So I'm going to cut a square. If I add 2.5 to that, that would be 8. So I'm going to cut a square 8 by 8 inches. And that will give me a piece of paper big enough to make an envelope for this card. If that was a card, it's actually just a piece of cardstock, but so I'm just going to mark this 8 inches and 8 inches. And then since we've got our nice metal ruler, we're just going to tear it because it's nice and quick. And whenever you're using your tail ruler, always pull on the largest side of what you're tearing, especially if you only have like 1/4 of an inch to tear off. Don't put your ruler here and try and tear off that 1/4 of an inch. Put your ruler on the 1/4 of an inch and grab the big piece and rip it that way, because that's the easiest way to do it. And so we did that. How big did we do that? 8 inches. So we need a square. So I'm going to come over here and go 8 inches. And this will work for any size card that you have, as far as I know. I've never had a problem. Okay, now instead of tearing the little side, I'm going to put it here. And then hold it nice and tight so that your paper doesn't slip. And there we go. So then we need to find the center of your paper, and you can do it however you want. If you don't want to have a fold in your paper, then you can just go point to point with your ruler and very lightly with a pencil draw a line. And the reason that we want to do that is we want to fold these in to this center point. And actually, I kind of lied. What we're going to do first is we're going to line up our card in our envelope. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to eyeball all 4 of my spots here. And then I'm just going to kind of make a little bit of a fold there and a little bit of a fold there. But then I want to make sure that these are actually straight. So now that I know exactly where I need to fold it, I'm going to put my point right on that line and fold it at that spot. So I need to move this up a little bit because it was kind of down there, and that way your folds will be nice and straight, because otherwise it's easy, even though you've eyeballed it, it's easy to get it off just a little bit. So here's my fold, and I need to bring that one up a little bit. So now they're straight across from each other, and see, they line up very nicely. And then we're going to put our card back inside of our envelope. Okay, and what we're going to do is remember that whatever you have left from your card to this point here, that's how much of an overlap you will have on your flaps. So you want to look and make sure that you have enough overlap on each side, one to put your glue so that it can be stuck later, and one to glue it together right now, and making sure that there's enough. So there is enough on both sides for us to glue it together. So I'm just going to fold this up like that. And then depending on if you want this point up here or not, you can cut it off. You can fold it over. Most of the time I just kind of look at about where it needs to be, and then I just fold it over in that area. and hope that I get it kind of straight, which I didn't. Let's see, which way do I need to go? I need this side to be down just a little bit. Okay, so there we go. And we have our envelope. Now, if you want to get rid of the bulk, sometimes it gets a little bit bulky here, especially if your paper is really thick because you've got extra paper there. What you do is you open it up and you cut that little triangle off. This little triangle right here between your side flap and your bottom flap, you wind up with this little triangle. So we're just going to cut that off. And that way we'll get rid of that bulk. Especially if you're using something like cardstock or any heavyweight paper for your envelope, that little corner gets a little bit thick. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, beside the other side flap and the bottom flap. Just like that. Alrighty, and now we can fold those in. Now, the easiest way, you definitely want to cut those triangles off the top, where your flap's going to be on the top. So, don't glue your bottom together until you have your top. We're going to fold our top down. Just like that. And then we're definitely going to remove those little triangles at the top because it won't look correct and it won't fold up as easily, especially if you're making like a set of gift cards or something. You don't want that person to have to deal with this little extra bit and not know what to do with it. So again, now between the side and the top is where we're cutting off this little tiny triangle. Just like that. Okay, and now we know that we can glue this down. And I usually glue, depending on which way you want to do it, I glue whatever is on the top. So if I want this flap on the top, I'm going to put my glue on here. If I put these on the top, then I'm going to put my glue on here. Then I know that I'm not getting my glue inside the envelope. And I like to do it this way. So you can use any kind of glue. I like tacky glue because it's not as wet as the Elmer's glue, although it's going to take me longer to get it to the bottom. You can even use a glue stick if you have one that you know is like a permanent glue stick that's not going to let go if you send it in the mail. Okay, so I am going to just put, whoops, I almost put the glue on the top. I'm going to glue this down a little bit, just a little bit of glue on there, just so that it doesn't get in our way. And then just a little bit of glue on here, and a little bit of glue on here. So long as we stop before we get to that fold, we know that that fold is not going to touch the back of our envelope. So just push that down. And when I cut this one, I cut it a little bit crooked, so I'm going to just trim that off. It's not real noticeable, but I don't like it sticking out there, so we'll just get rid of that. And now we have our envelope, and there we go. We take our card, and we stick our card in here. Now, also, be careful about not pulling really, really tight so that it's so tight it's hard to get your card in there. And if you use the card that you're actually going to mail out, if it's got a little bit of bulk to it, you'll still have the right size. If you use just a flat piece of card like this, and then you try and stick a folded card in there, it will be much tighter because now you only have enough room. See, this is very, very tight, just two pieces of paper. So if you use the card that you've actually made that you want to send out, then it will slip in there nicely because your envelope was made specifically for that card. So there we go. Now we've got an envelope. We can actually just mail this out, send it to anyone that we want to. Whoops, I don't know what I've got on there, but I've got something on there. There we go. And so what are we going to do? We can glue down the flap. We can put double-sided sticky tape on there and stick it down. But what if we want to make a set of cards for people and you don't want to leave it blank? You don't want to put double-sided sticky because maybe they won't know how to use it. You want to make some glue that they can just lick and stick. Okay. So I looked up some recipes, and I found the recipe pretty much that I found the whole time was glycerin and hubby's sitting here and he just said it wasn't glycerin, and he's correct. The one that I found was vinegar, and it was 1 teaspoon of vinegar. Here we go. 1 part vinegar to 2 parts glue, just white Elmer's glue. And so I did that, and then in there they also put, some put cinnamon, some put peppermint, some put vanilla, because it tasted terrible, and it smells terrible. Now, I made this a week ago. I'm going to see if it still smells. And it does. It still smells like vinegar. Now, once you paint it on there, it's not going to be that bad, but I just didn't like it. So then I thought, well, okay, the vinegar's, you know, just something to keep it maybe from molding or whatever. So what if we try glycerin? 1 part glycerin to 2 parts glue. This one I also made a week ago. Now that one is much more watery because glycerin is thicker than vinegar. And glycerin does not taste bad or smell bad. And it's still nice and watery. And it doesn't smell funny. You don't have to, if you want to put a little tiny splash of vanilla in there, that's fine, especially with the glycerin being thicker. It won't be any thinner than the vinegar. And then it will have, you know, a vanilla flavor or a peppermint or whatever you want to put in there, but just a little drop. And then you have it, and you can keep it in a nice airtight container. Make sure you have a good snap tight container, and you can keep it that way. So I went ahead and I put the vinegar on this one, and I put the glycerin on this one, and I actually had like a little envelope here so that we could test them. And then I thought, well, I want to test them so you can see how well they stick after they've, you know, dried. Are they going to come off or whatever? So I went ahead and cut my point of my envelope in half. I had put the vinegar and glue here. So then I just stuck this side down. This has been a week ago, and this is how well it is stuck down. It is stuck down really good as any other envelope, and literally it's a lick and stick. So I'll just put the other side down. Now the one thing you want to make sure that you do is don't get your glue all the way up to some place where it's going to stick itself to the envelope or the card inside. So there's that one. Now here's the one with the glycerin and the glue, and how well did it stick? And it stuck really well too. It stuck really, really well. Okay, so that one, that works really well that way too. And we'll just like that. And they've been painted on here now for a week, so we'll see if they still work after a week. And there we go, that works really well. So you can go ahead and you can put it in with your glycerin, put a little flavoring in there, and then if you make a set of cards to send to someone, you know, you can paint it on there, let it dry before you put it away, and then you can put it in a nice little kit and send someone a set of cards and envelopes that are just really ready to be licked and stick. Sorry about that, my daughter called. So we went through the vinegar and Elmer's glue and the glycerin and Elmer's glue, and they both work just fine. But then I got to thinking, and it's like, okay, but what if we just used plain old Elmer's glue? So I painted it on here. It's dry. I stuck one side down, and now these were all dry before I licked them and stuck them down. I didn't paint them on and stick them down right away. I let them dry. And so here is our Elmer's glue. And that works really well also. I have to say that the glycerin and the glue, or just the straight glue, works better than the vinegar and glue. This one came up a lot easier, and the thing is, if you're sealing an envelope, you want it to be sealed well. You don't want it to catch and maybe come loose in travel when you're sending something. So here we go. Here is our Elmer's glue. And just lick it and stick it. Now that has been sitting for a week. They've all been sitting for a week. That stuck down just fine, just as good as the other two. And so that's why I said last week, before you buy the vinegar or the glycerin or anything, wait till you got to this point, because so these are recipes to make your own glue, but this is just Elmer's school glue. Just plain old Elmer's school glue. You don't need a container for it. I got a container out for it and it was like, well, why would I do that? I just have the glue. I just use it right out of the bottle. So what we're going to do is we'll just grab a brush, which I should have grabbed while I was off. Hold on just a second. And I like a flat brush just because it's easier to just go right straight down. Now, I don't know that you'd want to use something like tacky glue. That's a little bit heavy, but the Elmer's school glue is really just Elmer's glue with a little bit more water in it. And it makes it just a little bit thinner. They can sell it cheaper that way because they put a little extra water in there, but it still works just fine. The only reason I shook that up was because I wanted to get the glue up here to the top of the bottle. And so then you just want to make sure that you don't stick it where it's going to stick to anything else when they lick it and stick it down. So just make a nice, thin, straight line. Well, you know what I mean, as straight as you can get it. On both sides. And then just let it dry. And there we go. Now we have our envelope. We'll let that dry. And then we're a little bit crinkly here because it's wet glue. If you don't like that, you just stick them in a heavy book and flatten them out. But it's not going to make that much of a difference. And so now you've got your card, you've got your envelope, and you've got a way to seal it so that you can send a set of them to someone. And if you really want people to think you made your own glue for your envelope, you can just put it in a little bottle. Just tell them it's a secret recipe. So that's what we have for today. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that if you make some little card sets yourself, that you have a good time doing that. These have not been sealed long, but we'll peel them back up just for the heck of it. Just peel that up there. And peel that up there. Now this one, we just glued it, so it's not going to stick that well, but if I can get under there. That even stuck the fastest. So there we go. So that's what we have. And I appreciate you stopping by. What we're going to need for next week is next week we are going to need a lint roller from the Dollar Tree. You want one of the larger sizes. They also have these little mini travel ones. You don't want one of these. You want one this size. And you want to make sure before you buy it that it rolls nicely. So you're going to need some of these, some baby powder, or if you have any kind of body powder, cornstarch, whatever like that at home, you don't have to buy the baby powder. You're going to use a very small amount of it. But since we don't have it in our stash, I had to pick that up. And then you're going to need some paper towel rolls, some fun foam, some glue, and some of your homemade ink. So that's what we're going to need for next week. We are going to spend $2 for next week, and that's what we're going to need. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.